Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So it is 13F season, which means we get to see what some of the best investors in the world bought recently. So there's going to be more 13Fs that come out tomorrow, but I just wanted to take a look at a few that came out today. And I'm using the website Dataroma, which is great with aggregating the information in these 13F filings. So let's look at three investors' 13Fs that came out today. We've got Mohnish Pabrai, Seth Klarman, and Guy Spier. So let's jump right into that. Mohnish Pabrai, so no surprises here. Micron is his biggest U.S. equity holding. He's got about 94 million in Micron. Seritage shows up as a new buy here because it wasn't on his last 13F filing. But of course, a lot of us knew that he owned this because of this 13G filing that he submitted on June 10th. And that was because he had more than 10% of the common shares outstanding for Seritage growth properties. So we knew he bought that. So nothing new from Mohnish Pabrai. Let's jump over to Seth Klarman, another wildly popular value investor. So there's not a lot to report here in terms of buys and sells in the last quarter, but I do want to note eBay, which was a big buy in the first quarter of 2020 for Seth Klarman. It's up double from kind of the likely buy price that Seth Klarman paid for eBay. So that's pretty impressive. That's obviously a huge chunk of his portfolio, but nothing in terms of quarter two activity to report for Seth Klarman. So the bulk of what I wanted to get into in this video is Guy Spier, who manages Aquamarine Capital. And of course, Guy Spier is, largely famous for paying $650,000 for lunch with Warren Buffett. Him and Mohnish Pabrai both kind of split that $650,000, lunch tab to dine with Warren Buffett, more than a decade ago. And, ever since then, of course, Mohnish Pabrai and Guy Spier have been good friends. They tend to bounce investment ideas off each other. So what's happening with Guy Spier? I was really surprised, actually, to see that he sold off 60% of his position in Ferrari. For those of you who don't know, Ferrari came with his purchase of Fiat Chrysler. So I think he got into Fiat Chrysler back in 2012, along with Mohnish Pabrai. In the beginning of 2016, Ferrari was spun off from Fiat Chrysler. And, shortly after that, Mohnish Pabrai exited his Ferrari position. It had gone up maybe a double since it spun off, and Mohnish Pabrai got out. And he's really bummed that he did that. So I was surprised to see that Guy Spier is selling off a significant portion of his Ferrari because, as Mohnish Pabrai pointed out, Ferrari is a fantastic long-term compounder, right? They don't do any advertising. People want to own Ferraris, right? They're calling Ferrari. Ferrari doesn't have to go after potential buyers. And so, if Guy wouldn't have sold this position, it would be 28% of Aquamarine Capital, which would be by far the biggest position. So, it's possible that Guy just isn't comfortable with that big of a position, that much concentration in one position in his portfolio. It's also possible that Guy really wants to have some cash right now because maybe he's thinking there's going to be some great buying opportunities in the near future. I don't know, this is all speculation, but I was surprised to see that he had sold off so much of his Ferrari stake. I figured this was one that, he was going to own for a long time. And he probably will own, what he has left for a long time. But it seemed like a pretty big trim for such a great company. For Fiat Chrysler, I wasn't surprised to see him trim that by quite a bit. Of course, Mohnish Pabrai really trimmed, actually sold off his entire Fiat Chrysler position, mostly in Q1, just a tiny bit, probably into April of 2020. So that's not a surprise. He added a little bit of Moody's, which is a little surprising. Moody's never seemed very cheap to me in the second quarter, but 8% isn't anything to write home about. And this excites me, actually, this here. So Guy Spier owned 400,000 shares of Seritage Growth Properties, and he added 100,000 shares in the second quarter of 2020, which is great. I own some Seritage Growth Properties, so it's comforting to see that Guy Spier added to that position in the second quarter. Guy has owned Seritage for a number of years. Obviously, Mohnish found a price that he was pretty excited about, probably around $8 a share. And, I'm assuming that price was pretty compelling for Guy Spier as well. So he added some SRG, and then he's got two new buys. They're very small positions with respect to the portfolio size, but he added Google and he added Twitter. I'm guessing he added Google around 1,100 per share, which was kind of the low price in early April. Twitter is a little bit of a surprise. Of course, Guy Spier, I don't know if you guys follow him on Twitter, but he does use Twitter a lot. It's probably his preferred social media platform. So I'm sure he's more familiar with the potential revenue prospects of Twitter than a lot of other investors. But interesting to see that he added Google and he added Twitter. So, and just bite-sized pieces, like I said, of those two companies. Google, I'm not surprised at all. Obviously, Google is a great company. I think Seth Klarman bought quite a bit in the first quarter of 2020. Mohnish Pabrai has owned Google before. Google's a fantastic company. I mean, you're watching me on YouTube, which is owned by Google. Google's it's such a profit machine. But Twitter, a little bit surprising. I'm just not sure what Twitter's plan is in terms of, making money over the long run. They were in talks about potentially buying TikTok instead of Microsoft. It seemed like those two were kind of the front runners for acquiring TikTok. And I don't have any updates on who might be the more likely buyer for that, but interesting to see. So that's kind of an update on Guy Spier. He tends not to do a whole lot in terms of, from quarter to quarter, you don't see a lot of activity from Guy Spier. So this is actually quite a bit of activity for him, selling off a big chunk of two different positions, adding to two positions, and then buying two entirely new positions. So, it's fun when you get this kind of activity from, a value investor that tends to be very slow to make buy and sell decisions. So lots of activity there. Like I said, there's probably going to be more interesting things happening tomorrow in the 13F arena. So you're probably going to see another video from me with updates, potentially from Bill Ackman and some of the other great value investors that I follow. So let me know in the comments below if there's a value investor that you're excited to see what they've been doing in the last quarter tomorrow. And let me know if any of these positions, additions, or subtractions from Guy Spier surprised you. Or if you're planning on acting on any of this information here, any of these moves by Guy Spier. I'd be curious to see how these are impacting you. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. I'll see you tomorrow with probably another installment of Super Investors and what's happening. All right, guys, take care.